Hello again. Now, if you've been looking at crossword clues, you may have often found that you're left with an awful lot of spare wordage, particularly with shorter clues, shorter answers. You'll find that a lot of the clue doesn't seem to have anywhere to live or substitute for anything in particular, and you can get bogged down in trying to work out how to compact so much clue into a very short answer. And the reason that often happens, one of the reasons this happens, I'm going to explain this week. It's a fairly common thing. It's actually a bit of a fundamental principle I've been holding back on because it's just one of those, there's even more to think about kind of moments. But it's a very useful way of compacting a lot of the clue into a small answer. So let's have a look at an example. Now, Edward keeps French 1 as piano should be regularly. 5 letters. Edward keeps French 1 as piano should be regularly. Quite a long clue, 5 letters all you're looking for. So you start to look for definitions, and if you remember, we talked about regularly possibly meaning alternate letters from things. So either the first, third and fifth letters, a regular pattern of letters from the preceding or following words. So you'd start maybe to look at that as functionality, which means you go to the other end for your definition, and you're looking at Edward or Edward keeps, which isn't particularly likely at the moment. So you can get a little bit stuck. You've got an awful lot of clue to play with, not much of an answer to generate. But also, we looked last time at this, French 1. And I said as soon as you see a place-based word or a language-based word, start thinking about what that could actually mean in that foreign language. French 1 is very likely to be either un or une. So you're fairly sure this is a piece of functionality or a piece of substitution, and that you're working the rest of the clue around that. But you've still got an awful lot to fit in. So then you come to this, keeps. Keeps could mean has inside it. If you keep something, you keep it, it's within, you keep something in a box, it's that kind of implication. So then you're thinking that this word might keep this, might keep the un or the une. So this is around that, which means definition is likely to be down here. So you could be looking at regularly, you could be looking at be regularly. It's a bit of an odd phrase, I don't think you can really find a 5-letter word for that. But as I said, you've already got 2, possibly 3 letters from here, and you know you're getting some letters from this somehow, which means you've got an awful lot to play with. And this is what I was going to talk about this week, was the idea of a phrasal definition. Up to now, we've been looking for one word. So one word will mean the answer, and the rest of the clue will function, will be wordplay around it. But this is your definition, the whole thing. And it's what I call a slightly sort of jokey phrasal definition. It's almost as if the words, for example, have been omitted in some way. They're not the easiest to spot, but sometimes with the shorter answers particularly, you're looking for something which is an example of that concept. So as piano should be regularly, what should you always do to a piano? Tune it. So yeah, I know, but then you can work the rest of the clue, or possibly you'll have come at it the other way, because people who are called Edward are often called Ted, and if Ted keeps a French 1, you get tuned. So you'll have French 1, Ted around the outside, but the important thing is this, as piano should be regularly, that whole thing was the definition. So you could have spent ages sitting there trying to think of substitutions for piano. Should be like live instead of be regularly. You could be picking letters out of the alternate here. But in fact, this whole thing was your definition on its own. And you'll see a lot of things like this. One that flows. One that flows perhaps could be the name of a river. Or one who presides could be judge. So you might, in that instance, if that came at the end of a clue, be looking at the word presides, and you would get judges. But one who presides, instead of thinking of the one as an I, you have to consider the fact that that whole thing might be your definition. So in this case, this entire thing is your definition. And the way to get to that clue is to look for the bits that you think you know the function of. So this was a good way in. French 1, un or une, you can spin the rest of the clue around that. And if you're thinking about pianos, you'll get un, and you might start to think of the word tune, and then you can see that this whole thing is definition. But the important thing to remember is that definitions are not always one word. They could be phrases, and that phrase suggests a category of things or a group of people, an example of which is your answer. So one thing of which that concept could be true is your answer. So one of the things you might need to do to a piano fairly frequently is a 5-letter word, is tune the piano. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky, but it's just in case you've been trying crosswords and you're finding that you're left with an awful lot of clue you can't explain. You might need to broaden your search for a definition to a phrase which suggests the answer. So I apologise for introducing that concept, but it's great when you get the hang of it, I promise. So happy solving.